Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. My name is Joanna Costello and I'm working at the headquarters at the International Solar Energy Society in Freiburg, South Germany. I'm just going to give you a few little introductory statements before the panelists come online. So the title of today's webinar is Solar Resource Assessment with the Irena Global Atlas for Renewable Energy. We have expert panelist speakers online for you today who are going to give their presentations and answer some of your questions. We're really pleased to announce that we now have 600 people registered for this webinar from all around the world. So we're really happy to have you all online and look forward to your questions in the Q&A session later. Before we begin with the webinar presentations, I would like to inform you about what ISIS is and stands for. So the International Solar Energy Society is a non-profit UN-accredited membership NGO. The ISIS vision is to achieve 100% renewable energy for all, used efficiently and wisely. We represent a diverse membership of academics, researchers, energy practitioners, consultants, students, businesses, and advocates. ISIS works together with like-minded organizations from countries around the world to advance the renewable energy transformation. By becoming a member of ISIS, you are supporting the 100% renewable energy movement. The presentations and recording of this webinar will be available after the event on the ISIS website. It will be available for about 24 hours, and after that time we will move them from the website to the ISIS members area. So if you are a member, please log in with your username and password and you will see the archive of webinars in the members area. If you are not a member, we encourage you to have a look at our membership services and benefits and encourage you to join. The website to join is join.ises.org. You are welcome and encouraged to ask questions at any time throughout the webinar. To ask a question, select the questions pane on your screen and type in your question. Please specify who your question is directed to. Questions will be addressed after all the presentations in a Q&A session. We would like to also encourage you to use the ISIS discussion forum on LinkedIn to continue the Q&A and the discussion even after the webinar has ended. That's all from me at the moment. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Kristen Deason, who is the Program Officer for Global Atlas Strategy at Irena, the International Renewable Energy Agency. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Kristen, to moderate the webinar.
Thank you, Joanna. My name is Kristen Deason, as you said, and I'm a Program Officer with the International Renewable Energy Agency. On behalf of Irena, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. Our presentations today will showcase several of the solar resource datasets that are available in the Global Atlas for Renewable Energy, Irena's online renewable energy mapping platform. Our speakers include Dave Renee, President of the International Solar Energy Society, who will help provide an introduction to the Global Atlas, Nicolas Pichot, Senior Program Officer at Irena, who will present an overview of Irena's Global Atlas for Renewable Energy, Gwen Bender, Product Manager for Energy Services at Vaisala, who will discuss Vaisala's global solar dataset for PV prospecting, and Lionel Maynard from Mine Paritech, who will discuss the transition that is currently happening from academic use of solar resource data to use by the renewable energy industry. As Joanna said, we will conclude with a question and answer session, and the entire webinar should be completed within 1.5 hours. For those of you not familiar with Irena, we are the intergovernmental agency mandated by countries around the world to promote the widespread and sustainable use of all forms of renewable energy. Irena currently has 147 members and 29 states in the process of becoming members. In January 2013, Irena launched the Global Atlas for Renewable Energy. This program was an outcome of the Clean Energy Ministerial process and is aimed at facilitating open access to renewable resource data, analysis, and methods in order to accelerate the initiation and development of a broader range of renewable energy projects. The initiative provides a freely available online platform that uses a map-based interface to provide global data on solar, wind, geothermal, bioenergy, and ocean energy resources. Currently, 67 countries and more than 50 institutes and partners are contributing to the initiative, and the interface provides access to over 2,000 data sets that can help with renewable energy planning. I'd now like to invite Dave Renee to say a few words about the history of the Global Atlas. Dave?
Thank you, Kristen, and welcome everybody. The origins of this idea of a global atlas started back in the year 1999 when several organizations, the U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory, DLR in Germany, Rizzo National Laboratory, and the USGS in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in the U.S. got together and started talking about the idea of incorporating digitized wind and solar resource maps into a database that also had tools available in this particular case with SWARE. The tools were a geospatial toolkit to allow users to access digitized resource information for their country and to be able to remove some key critical knowledge barriers about what are the renewable energy resources available for their country. So the project became known as SWARE, which stands for the Solar and Wind Energy Resource Assessment Program. It was organized, the United Nations Environment Program organized the technical institutions and went out and solicited a number of countries to participate in the project. In the end, we had 13 countries participating, and the map that you see here are the other countries that were finally selected to participate in the original SWARE project. The project was funded by the Global Environment Facility and began in about the year 2001, where the technical institution started preparing digitized solar and wind resource maps using numerical weather prediction models and satellite imagery to provide these maps. And then after the data sets were completed, they were integrated into geospatial toolkits that were developed at NREL and at the USGS. Maps are also provided online as digital maps, as well as the data underlying, some of the underlying data. In those days, the data were relatively coarse in this, both in the spatial and temporal resolution. But it was really the first time that an effort was made to bring these two important resource categories together into one archive. There were plans to expand the number of countries as well as to move into other renewable resource databases such as geothermal and bioenergy. But then with the formation of the International Renewable Energy Agency, it became obvious that it would be much better to have that organization take over the leadership of this initial database that was being put together by UNEP. And so shortly after its formation, Irena launched its Global Atlas using some of the original concepts in SWARE, but also a lot of very new and very important ideas to make the data even higher quality and more accessible, and to also be able to be more inclusive with all the data sets that were being developed. So I think the Global Atlas started probably about 10 years or so, maybe a little bit less than 10 years after the SWARE project. The SWARE project ended around 2007, and that's about the time that the Global Atlas started. So I think that's all I have to say about SWARE as the foundation of what is now a very valuable and important global database and with tools that are available for people to access and make some important decisions from data that's already been developed by other institutions around the world. So with that introduction to SWER, Kristen, I'll be happy to turn it back to you to continue your overview of the Global Atlas.
Thanks, Dave. That was great background, and I think that provides a terrific introduction to the rest of the presentations we have here today. And also thank you for all your support for the Global Atlas over the past few years. And with that, I'll turn it over to our first speaker, Nicolas Fichot. As I mentioned, he's the Senior Program Officer at Irena, and he'll give us some additional background on the Global Atlas.
Thank you, Christine. The first thing I'd like to say is to express my sincere support to our American colleagues after what happened in Orlando. The same happened to my country recently, and I truly appreciated the support of our US colleagues in this situation, and I share your pain. The second thing, I'd like to thank the International Solar Energy Society and Dave in particular for organizing this webinar. A successful initiative has many fathers, and I'm very proud that Dave is one of them. The Global Atlas project is very close to the heart of Irena here, and as you know, we are not an IT company, and we don't operate the largest initiative for sharing geospatial data just because we like knowledge and open data. No, that's not why we do this initiative. We created this initiative with 67 countries and 50 data providers because we want more renewable energy in the global energy mix. That's why we are doing what we do. And we do that because we are fully aware that this has to happen to have more renewable energy if we want to leave a planet that is livable to our children and our grandchildren. So what will happen? What will happen is that the renewable energy market will grow, and it will represent $1 trillion market within less than a generation. In less than a generation, 24 million people will work in the renewable energy sector. This is the population of Australia. This is twice Belgium, twice Portugal, or twice Greece, or 4 times Nicaragua, or 4 times Lebanon, working in the renewable energy sector full time. This is what it represents, and this is what we are talking about. So the question we want to answer today is, where will this happen? And we know that this will happen in these countries that are now setting renewable energy targets, which are countries in the developed economies, countries in the emerging economies, which is happening today already, and also many countries in the developing world. So what we need to do is to provide support to those governments, the investors, and also the supply chain, and to make sure that they know that they are doing the right thing at the right place and in a very cost-effective way. And this is why our team here and the international consortium with us is working on getting the best data set and the best tools and the best knowledge available in order for these people to make a better job and faster. And in this endeavor, we are supported by a wide range of players, as I said, including private companies. And today, I'm very glad that we have the participation of 2 major data providers and supporters of this initiative. One of them is Vaisala, former free tier, and they were the first to share with us private data. At the time when we started the Atlas, we started with the SWERA database, and we knew that between the era of SWERA and the current stage of the market, there was a big gap. And when we started this initiative, we had pressure to deliver because the member state of Irena wanted to have very quick an explorer for renewable energy potential. So we turned to Vaisala and we asked for support. And they agreed to share with us their very famous solar dataset and their very famous wind dataset. And at the time when we delivered that, this was the best ever published data in the public domain. And this was coming from Vaisala. So thank you for that, and I'm very glad that you are here today to present your work. Also in this adventure, we have very key partners. One of them is MinParisTech. MinParisTech, they are helping us for 2 things. They decided to disclose their HelioClim dataset. So first, the first HelioClim dataset, HelioClim 1, which was a 10 years old dataset, but they decided to disclose tools so that we can explore this dataset and get time series every 15 minutes for the last 30 years. Again, this was the first time we could make something like that available in the public domain, and it was thanks to them. The second thing they decided to do is to share with us their private dataset, the dataset that they sell, and they decided to share a slice of this dataset with us so that we can put in the public domain the best dataset possible to our user. And they are doing that because, not because they like us, but because they believe also that this growth of renewable energy has to happen, and they know they can contribute to it. So in the audience, if you think you can also join this initiative, also contribute to what we are doing, you are most welcome to join. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicolas. Our next speaker is Gwen Bender, Product Manager for Energy Services at Vaisala. So Gwen, I think Joanna will turn over control of the presentation to you.
Great. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. So thank you for that very nice introduction. So Vaisala is an 80-year-old weather company that has mostly been in the equipment manufacturing space for measuring weather impacts globally around the world. And in 2 years ago, 2014, they decided to get into the renewable energy business. And one of the things they did was to acquire 3Tier, which was and is a modeling company for services regarding assessment and forecasting of both wind, solar, and hydro. And so the experience that 3Tier brought to Vaisala in the solar space was in 2009. We developed a global data set for solar assessment based on satellite imagery. And it was the first globally available data set like this. There were other regional data sets. This was the first that went completely global. And this is the information that we decided to provide to Irena in order to advance the conversation about the availability of solar resource and to increase the deployment of renewables globally. And while I'm not going to talk about it today, we also did the same for wind. So today, we have a very long process that any developer has to go through to install some solar, particularly at the utility scale. Today, we're only going to be talking about kind of one of the first pieces, which is getting the resource data in order to make your designs and go through the process. So what data did we make available to Irena? We made available a global GHI annual data map, which we feel is an excellent place to start the process in terms of being able to prospect different locations and see which areas are going to be most beneficial for your project development depending on where you are in the world. For those who may not know, the GHI information is what is used for fixed photovoltaic and allows us to understand how much energy is going to be derived based on what input is going to be received from the resource information. So the data that's available in the Irena portal is a 10-year annual GHI, and it starts in different times, but it all goes up through 2010, and is available not quite for the entire world, but from 60 degrees up to 50 degrees south. What goes into a satellite-derived assessment are different data parameters that are all coming down to get you two numbers, one being your cloud index, which is how cloudy it is in a certain pixel, and the clear sky radiance, which is how clear or how much overall radiance one might get. And those combine to get the information that you need in order to do your PV modeling. And the data that's available at Irena has different sources for information. So, the SRTM for elevation is a consistent global standard data set. We use a snow and ice data set to identify locations where snow or ice may be on the ground. Because snow looks a lot like clouds, it's one of the things that can make the satellite imagery get a little confused. We're using 5 different geostationary satellites globally, and each region also has had several satellites over a period of time. We're using the Paris-Suni methodology, which takes the clear sky irradiance to derive out GHI, and then you're calculating DNI and diffuse from that. We have a proprietary algorithm that we're using to identify what the cloud index is. And we use MODIS satellite information for the humidity or aerosol, so things like humidity or pollution or other dust in the atmosphere that's going to refract the sunlight. Satellite-based assessments, do have their flaws. Like I said, snow looks like clouds, and they may make the data set not as accurate as you might like during some periods of the year. But they are very good for having a consistent global approach to looking at the information in different locations in the same way. So I think for the case of Irena, where you may be looking at a single country, but different areas in that country, or maybe be looking between countries, I think that information being consistent is very important to being able to understand how different locations compare to each other. So we've validated the data set in order to understand where it performs well and where it does not perform well. And so none of these stations were allowed to change or influence the data set because again, we want that consistent approach, and if you're regionally adjusting it, you are more accurate in those regions, but now it's quite difficult to compare one region to the next because they are no longer consistent. So, you can see that there are areas in this data set that may not be as good as others, but I think that it still allows for being able to compare one location to another in a consistent way. So how are we suggesting that this kind of data gets used? If we're looking at the Irena website and you're looking at the data set, again, I think that the best use of this data is to be comparing different locations and choose your locations of interest in which you want to do more due diligence to go through the process of actually building something. So for fun, I chose 2 locations to do a comparison with. The first is in Germany. The Intersolar show is coming up next week in Munich, so I decided to take a look at that. So if we click, the Irena website actually lets us get a little bit more information at each location. So when you look at the map, you can see the color bar here, and blue is bad and dark red is good, but you can also click and get the exact long-term mean as well. And in Germany, we're showing 138 watts per meter squared on an annual basis. And you can see that it's a little bit blue, and so it's a little on the low side for what one might expect PV to work at, but obviously Germany has a ton of deployment. But to do a comparison with a more sunny location, it shows the Irena location for their headquarters, and there we see 235, almost 36 watts per meter squared on an annual basis, and so obviously that seems like a great place to be deploying solar. And with the record low PPA prices we've seen recently, I think that that's the case. So most developers are probably not looking on a global scale like this at different locations. More likely you're looking at a single country and trying to make choices about what you want to do within a region or a country. For example, Argentina, with its upcoming auctions, has had a lot of interest. And if one were to do work in Argentina, right, I would suggest that you go up north and not down south. So, I think that the information can be useful for, making choices about where you want to focus your energy. But obviously there are next steps after that. At Vaisala, we believe very much that you have to understand the variability at a certain location. So while an annual map, may show that this area is orange, there's going to be variability at any location. I think India is a great example where you can see the monsoon come in across the year, and that, different years that comes on in different ways. And that's going to have an effect on the variability year to year at your particular location, which is absolutely going to affect your actual energy output at the end of the day. So, I think that it's important to understand the variability. This is 2015 in the US. How that variability happens and when it happens. For example, that if Q1, which is typically a low irradiance portion of the year, happens to be low in one year, but the summer quarter is high, maybe at the end of the year, the fact that you had a couple of low quarters ended up being quite so impactful as having a low summer might be, for example. So we definitely recommend, maps are step one. The next step is going to be to get a time series of data so that one can understand what the actual variability, and this is a site in Texas, is going to look like over the long term, and to get that information from a company like Vaisala, or I believe that the next speaker will be talking about time series information as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gwen. I just want to remind everyone that while you're listening to these presentations, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type your questions into the questions panel on the GoToMeeting interface. Those questions will come to us and we'll answer them all at the end. So please feel free to ask those at any time. Okay, so our next speaker is Lionel Maynard from Mines Paris, and I will hand the floor over to Lionel.
Thank you, Christine. So my name is Lionel Maynard. I'm from Mines Paris, and this presentation will focus on the use of solar resources that we produce here at Mines Paris from an academic and research perspective towards industrial application. So a few words about Mines Paris. Mines Paris is a French school of engineering, which is over 2 centuries of history as a graduate school. It gathers around 260 professors and researchers, over 14,000 students, and it gathers 18 research centers. It is ranked in France as the first institute for partnership in research. The Center of Observation Impact Energy, in which I'm working in, basically has 3 important topics of research: assessment of solar, wind, and marine resources for renewable energy using Earth observation data, so globally understood as ranging from models, satellite imagery, and in-situ measurement. We do focus also on the assessment of environmental impact through the use of a life cycle assessment approach. And finally, though it is not a research activity per itself, we have interest in dissemination of scientific data based on open standards through the use of spatial data infrastructure. Regarding solar resource assessment, we have developed the HelioSat methods and the HelioClim database to assess surface solar irradiance. So the HelioSat method is an open method. It has been started to be developed in 1986, and it uses images from a geostationary meteorological satellite to provide estimation of SSI. So currently we operate two different methods. The Heliosat-2 method, which started to be developed in 2004, which has been developed by Minparitech. It's based on cloud index, and it is currently used operationally for the HelioClim1 and HelioClim3 database. Another method has been developed in 2009. It's a joint effort from Minparitech and the DLR, the German Aerospace. And this method uses cloud property based approach, and it is used currently in the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service, the CAMS, which is a funded project by the European Commission. The Heliosat method is quite well known, nearly 1,000 citations in the Web of Science, and I provide you a link if you want to know more about these methods at the bottom of this page. So the Heliosat methods are used to build HelioClim databases. We currently operate two versions of the HelioClim databases, the HelioClim1, which uses the Meteosat first generation. It has a resolution of 20 to 30 kilometers, daily values, a large temperature coverage from 1985 to 2005, so 21 years of data, and it has been made fully available in 2011 as the collaboration with the GEOS, the Global Earth Observation System. It is released under the Data Core license. Core is the collection of open resource for everyone. The HelioClim3 database is based on Meteosat second generation, better resolution, 3 kilometers, better temporal resolution, 15 minutes. It has started to be built until 2004. And we have released the 2004 and 2005 years as a free access resources. So we have built some maps, and we also provide some time series that you can freely access for those 2 years in order to fulfill educational and research activities. Since 2006 until real time, so 15 minutes from now, there's commercial activities that are provided by Transvaler of Innovation, which is a spin-off of Minparitech. Last year we have had over 4 million access to the database, which is available on the sodapro.com website. On the right of the slide, you see the spatial coverage and resolution of HelioClim3, which is based on the Meteosat satellite that is centered over the equator, and you see that it's decreasing northbound, southbound, and west and eastbound according to the curve of the Earth. So the contribution to the global atlas regarding Minparitech is threefold: as a data provider, as a data integrator, and as an infrastructure provider. So as a data provider, we have commit over 300 resources in the global atlas from the two main products that I have presented previously, the HelioClim1, where we have provided maps over the full Meteosat coverage from 32 maps from 1995 to 2005 of mean of global irradiance, and we have provided a tool to access those 21 years of time series in the global atlas in the tool section, as also an open source access to the use of web processing services. I will illustrate this later in the presentation. Regarding HelioClim3, we have provided the same for the Meteosat coverage for the global diffuse and direct irradiance. And we have also produced some focus maps on some countries, so Mozambique and Egypt. You see a lot of maps that are 10 years average of monthly mean of daily irradiation for the global direct and diffuse component. We also participating in the Solar Med Atlas project, where we have provided GSI and DNI maps for the South Mediterranean countries. So that's for the data provider. We also act as a data integrator for the renewable energy community, and in that sense we have taken over the view and the hosting of the maps from Australia, from the BOM, the Bureau of Meteorology, where we have hosted 20 maps of monthly and seasonal average daily solar exposure. We have done also, we also host for the community the MERA database, which is world coverage with gridded maps that provide you temperature, pressure, humidity, wind speed, and direction. That's for the our involvement in the Global Atlas as a data integrator. Finally, we are an infrastructure provider, and we do operate the special data catalog, which is the backbone of the Global Atlas, which gather over 1,600 resources in the form of metadata that allow you to discover those resources from data providers that participate to the Global Atlas. And the special data catalog, from which I've provided you the link over here, also provide the link to the GEOS, the Global Earth Observation System of Systems. It means that all the data that are in this catalog are also available into the GEOS web portal. So it is being part of the Global Atlas is really important for me in Paris as 3 different topics. As an academic institute, the Global Atlas really supports student and engineer education. And in that sense, we have extensively used the Global Atlas tool for illustrating our free solar training that gather yearly over 40 researchers and practitioners in solar energy on a free 3-day training we're organizing here at MIN-ParisTech, and we have extensively used the example of the Global Atlas to support this academic and this solar training. As a research institute, now that the Global Atlas exists, definitely is the one-stop shop that we look for when we are searching for data worldwide for renewable energy. Of course, as a data provider, it's a central tool for us to disseminate renewable energy resources and enable to leverage the visibility of the data provider. So we are also data provider, and we definitely praise the use of the Global Atlas for such. And then as a partnership research toward industry, it allows advertisements of data for pay, and this is what we've done for the HelioClim 3 to the potential customers thanks to the Global Atlas, which has a really visible and highly visibility in the renewable energy domain. And of course, it's about industry partnerships for R&D. So I will provide you 2 examples of the use of our data. So this example is a mashup that gather HelioClim 3 data, in situ measurement, and mix with a digital elevation model, the SRTM1, to provide high-resolution local solar atlas. So the user profile of the users for this mashup are governmental or private sector. They will allow to perform some geographical analysis of the local solar potential, and as well as the setting and sizing of power plants. So in that case, we take on the
Elena, if you could just, I think you accidentally muted your microphone.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I did. Sorry. Where did I stop? Because I've used the mouse to illustrate the
about 10 seconds ago.
Okay, so basically we take the HelioClim 3 database as raw measurements, combine them with, made a calibration using in-situ measurement from Météo France station and 3 dedicated ground stations. We've computed local horizon by using the SRTM digital elevation model, also compute altitude, and then we downscale all those elements to GHI and DNI maps, which provide high resolution at 200 meters monthly and yield a sum of irradiation for the PACA region, which is the southeast of France. And so you end up with a portfolio of over 80 layers, providing you 200 meter resolution irradiation maps that we've combined with different other open geographical layers, such as digital elevation aspects, slope, fluid risk, distance to electric source point. So it's a kind of use of the HelioClim 3 database, and those datasets are available on the catalog as well on the Global Atlas. Then another way of using our data was, it was been mentioned by Nicolas, is the release of the HelioClim 1 daily value for solar irradiation time series for the period 1985 to 2005. And we have developed a tool mechanism in the Global Atlas that allows you to select up to 5 locations at a time on the map, and then you are provided with the time series as a mean of a graph, a bar graph, which is over here, as well as a matrix with all the data, and you can download the data to use for your own purpose. So you can, it has been mentioned in the presentation, you can use this to compare to ground measurement station. This is what we have done, for example, in Mozambique to assess the measurement from satellite in Mozambique. You can use them to model electricity production of a given PV system, and there are tools to do so, PV6 for example, but Rescreen and Homer are also compatible. It can help you to understand the potential of a given site, and then you can compare those measurements and compare PV technology with those measurements. Of course, when it came to industry requirements, and for project development such as the consolidation phase or the bankable report, you need some more accurate and long-term solar and meteorological data sets, as well as related uncertainty for the given site. So you need long-term, over 10 years time series of solar and meteorological data, and short-term, at least over 1 year of in-situ ground measurements. And in that sense, you need tailored expertise service, and the HelioClink 3 database are perfectly suited to do so, and it is operated by Transvalor Innovation that allow you to subscribe to annual subscription for getting access to archive, real-time measurement, or even forecast, or to perform some request services such as maps, which are GIS compatible, calibration, completion, or the production of TMY, typical meteorological year. And in that sense, the Global Atlas has perfectly nailed down these needs of industry requirement, and the Global Atlas has provided a methodology which is called the fitness for use. There's been a concept paper that has been issued, the URL is over here, and basically it has the intention to tag certain data sets which are really, let's say, suited towards industry requirement with some meta tags, and it has been currently done. It is not perfectly as well integrated in the Global Atlas. We are working on it, but it's a mean to really illustrate the perfectly used for business of certain data sets using this meta tag approach. So finally, I would like to draw my own perspective about possible addition to the Global Atlas. And one of these is access to in-situ measurement time series. So I think it could be a good addition to the Global Atlas combined with all the maps that are currently available. And we have been funded by a project called Connecting Geo, a EC-funded project, where we have developed a web application that allows you to select on the left side station on the map to browse the phenomenon that are provided by those stations and to display them as a graph or as a matrix and download them. And I think, I'm sure, that all the technology which underline this approach of making access to in-situ measurement are perfectly in line with the ones that are supported by the Global Atlas, which imply the use of standards, the use of interoperability, and the use of web services. Another thing that I think could be of interest in the Global Atlas is the assessment of environmental performance of the energy system. And in that case, we have performed a study for PV system with the IEA, the International Energy Agency, and we have provided a tool which is web-based to assess the current and prospective environmental performance of the production, transportation, and use of PV system at the screening level. And it allows you to quantify environmental performance of a system based, for example, on climate change, CO2 emission. And I think it could be also a good addition to consider this aspect of the whole spectrum of using solar energy and systems in the Global Atlas. If you want to know more, you can have a look at the webservice.energy.org, where you find access to a lot of information as well as different mashups that we have developed so far. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lionel. And thanks to all of our presenters for 3 very interesting and detailed presentations. Just to remind everyone, we've gotten a few questions come through, but we won't be doing verbal asking of questions. If you have a question, you need to type it in to the GoToMeeting interface. There should be a section that's called questions, and if you type your question in there, it will come directly to us. So with that, let me start with the Q&A. Okay, I'll try to group a couple of these together. So one of the first questions we got was, how do I access the Irena radiation data? This is from Yogesh Kumar Singh. And we also got a similar question that says, I'm a researcher in a research unit. I'm preparing a study for the integration of a photovoltaic system. I've used the online software PVGIS, and I want some data for a specific region in Algeria. So I'll take those together. The first one, how do I access the Irena radiation data? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. To access the Global Atlas for Renewable Energy, you can go to the URL that's shown in the chat window of the webinar. You can also just Google Global Atlas, and it will be the first result that pops up. When you first enter into the Global Atlas interface, it's a search interface. Like we mentioned at the beginning, we have many different data sets in there. So to access the data sets that were discussed today, you can put in a keyword on the left-hand side of the interface. There's a box where you can enter a keyword. So if you type in Vaisala, it will bring up the Vaisala data set, the Vaisala map that Gwen discussed. If you type in helioclim, it will bring up the one that Lionel discussed, and that will allow you to open that map and take a look at those data sets. To actually access the numerical data, there's two ways you can do that. One way I think Gwen demonstrated during her presentation, if you click on a specific point on the map, a box will pop up, and if you double click on the data set that you're interested in, it will give you a value for that point. Now if you're interested in values for multiple points, the only way to get that is to download, and we're actually very proud of our new data download feature in the Global Atlas that we launched just a few weeks ago. And the way to access that is if you're in the Global Atlas interface, you can right-click on the data set, and at the very bottom of the right-click menu, there's an option that says download. Now this is not available for all the data sets in the Atlas, but I believe it is available for both data sets that were discussed today. And what that does is it actually gives you a GeoTIFF file that you can open in another GIS program and do some offline analysis from there. Okay, so hopefully that answers those questions. Next one is, I'm going to give this one to Nicola. How can these solar maps be linked with costs of development and then made available to COP22 delegates at Marrakesh in November?
So the Marrakesh event is a very important event because we are after the Paris Climate Agreement, and while countries committed for a very ambitious renewable energy target, the COP Marrakesh will actually discuss how to finance them probably. This will be a very important topic. So when we have this kind of topic on the table, of course, as you are saying, resource and cost information is very important. There are two things we can supply. The first thing is the Global Atlas itself that is already available. And then the second thing that is existing is that we have the Atlas linked also with the knowledge platform of Irena that is called Resource. So if you Google resource.irena, irena.org/resource, sorry, you will find all the content that the organization is delivering. It includes the Global Atlas, and it also includes publication on costs, for example, that are the most up-to-date right now globally. So what you will find there, you will go to the data and statistics section, and you will find the cost progresses that the different technologies made. And for example, you will find out that solar PV cost has been cut by 5 in a very short period of time. So this kind of information we have, and it is being coupled, but not directly inside the Global Atlas, because that would be too much, but it's coupled through our knowledge platform, in that case, irena.org/resource, and you go to the statistics section, you'll find this data, no problem.
All right, thanks, Nicola. I've got two questions here for Gwen. First question is from Chris Fell, and he's asking, regarding the average GHI values being quoted, what hours of the day are these averaged over? And the second question for you, Gwen, is coming from Joy Smith Singh, and he's asking, what's the resolution of SRTM DEM? Is annual average GHI average of daily average? Gwen, do you want to take those?
Sure. So the annual averages come from an hourly, a 10-year hourly data set, and so they're averaged over all available hours of the day, and they're not representative of daily averages or anything like that. The information that's there is the long-term annual average, so what you would expect to see over an entire year, the average of that. But it comes out of the data set that we have, which is an hourly data set that spans, for what we provided to Irena is a 10-year data set, but what we would provide to clients that come and talk to us is, we have a data set that's updated through yesterday. And I think that will answer both questions.
Okay, thanks, Gwen. We have I think a similar question for Lionel. Lionel, this is from, actually I think it's the same question as her. Joytna Singh says, hi Lionel, your SRTM EM resolution is 100 meters, but GHI maps resolution is 200 meters. Could you please tell me the complexity for getting 100 meter resolution GHI map?
Yeah, I can answer this. Well, I have currently no answer regarding this. I have made here a link to the former ISIS paper and presentation that has been provided in my presentation. So I would redirect this to this presentation. I have no answer regarding this question. I'm sorry to put it aside.
Okay, no problem. I'll remind everybody, all the question askers and everyone on the webinar, if you don't get to ask a question today, we're certainly available for questions afterwards, and our contact information will be provided after the webinar. Okay, we have still quite a few questions, so let me keep going. Here's one from Bilal Babar. He says, what is the accuracy of the global atlas on overcast days? Is it considerably larger than on clear sky conditions? Well, to answer this question, I'd remind you that the global atlas is a collection of data sets, so certainly every data set is different, but for these solar data sets, the data that's in there is an average. So it's not giving you data for a particular day, it's averaging all the days together. So hopefully that answers the question. Similar question here from Prashant Pidaparthi. He's asking, resolution of the data plays a critical role in the energy analysis for solar plants. What is the resolution of the Irena Global Atlas? So that question, same thing. Remember, there's over 2,000 data sets in the Global Atlas, and each of those data sets has a separate resolution. And again, this data isn't generated here at Irena. It's provided by all of our partners who provide it to us. So each of those data sets has a different resolution, but you can look in the Global Atlas and find out what that resolution is. When you're looking at the Global Atlas, if you right-click on the layer, so this would be on the left side of the screen in the layer tree, there's an option that says Layer Info. And if you click on that, it will bring up a bunch of information for that layer. Normally it'll say what the resolution is, as well as where the data comes from and some description of the methodology. And most times it also includes a link to a website that provides more information about that layer. But if you can't find the information you need, please feel free to send us an email and we can help you out with that. Okay. We had a couple questions about India. This one asks, Rajasthan state has the highest solar potential in India. Will it be possible to prepare a solar atlas for Rajasthan or India based on multiple parameters? And who can possibly fund this research initiative? Nicola, do you want to take that one?
Okay, I cannot answer about the funding, that would be too nice. But what I can do is to tell you what I know about the latest project that was delivered in India. So it's not a data set that is yet published in the Global Atlas, but we are in discussion with CWET, which is the Energy Research Center in India. And what they have done is that they have delivered a very detailed, both in spatial resolution and in time, a very detailed, validated solar atlas for the continent. It was the Soul Map project. It's something that was supported by GIZ, the German government. And also, in addition to that, they are also operating, so in the Soul Map project, they are operating I don't remember, but it's 30 to 50 ground stations and that are validated and maintained. And also, in addition to that, they had another validation network that they have been using. So this data is now with the CWET, the Energy Center in India, and to my knowledge, this is the latest validated atlas for the entire country. So I would refer you to that. Over the continent, there are several other datasets that are available. Some of them you can find in the atlas. Vaisala is one of them. However, in terms of ground validated dataset, to my knowledge, it's with this density of network, to my knowledge, is the only one.
Okay, thank you, Nicolas. Let's see here. Okay, Yogesh Kumar Singh is asking, what is the difference between the data of NASA and Irena? So again, I'll point out that in the Global Atlas is really a mechanism for collecting data that's produced by different institutes all over the world. So the NASA data is displayed in the Global Atlas, but there are very few of the data sets that we have available in the Global Atlas are actually produced by Irena. We do have a few, but they are sort of a higher level type of information. We have a few suitability analyses that we've published recently, one for Latin America, one for the GCC, and one for Southeast Europe. And this basically takes different data sets into account. It looks at things like the solar resource data. It looks at distance to the grid, population centers, protected areas, and assigns a score to each location, indicating how promising it is for renewable energy development. And we have that for solar and wind, both for off-grid and on-grid. Okay. Next question. Give me a second here. Okay, this is a little bit similar to one of the questions we had before. Are the uncertainties for each data set available in accuracy terms and error? Nicolas, do you want to take that one? I talked a little bit about the resolution, but this is a slightly different question.
Yeah, so yes, thank you for the question. So there are two ways we address this question. The first way we address this question is by, like Lionel was mentioning, putting a data quality tag on the dataset. So in that case, this is a high-level indication of the quality of the data, and we do that because we had many users that are not experts in physics. However, they want to know how far they can use the dataset. So in that case, we developed this fitness for use indicators, which is telling you if you are more you will be more willing to use the dataset for education purposes, for policy purposes, for example, or for prospection, and these datasets are tagged. Now, if you are a physician and an expert, you will be looking for more detailed information, in which case the particularity of the atlas is that for every single dataset, every single layer, we spend a lot of time to document these layers. So what we do is that we use a catalog that is operated by Paritech, where we have the metadata for every layer, or where the dataset, how the dataset has been produced, by who owns the copyright. And what we do is that we add the links to the website and the validation protocol or the scientific articles when we can do that. So how you access this information? When you open a map in the Global Atlas, on the left side you have the layer tree with the list of layers. And what you do, you will right-click on one of these layers and you will go to Layer Info and you will have the description of the layer. In some cases, we even have an identity card of the dataset with all the data quality elements that we could collect. But this is something we are doing on progressively. We haven't finished to do that for every dataset. But for every dataset, what you will find is the source and the link to the validation process for the dataset. That's how we operate.
Thanks, Nicolas. I wanted to hand it over to Gwen for a second. Gwen just sent me a message and wanted to add something about the discussion about the data in India. Gwen? Yeah, so the atlas is available through CWET now, NIWE, is that atlas I think is very good. It's definitely a complicated situation.
So there are 112 ground stations operated by the agency in India that are taking GHI, DNI, and diffuse measurements. And those were used to build an atlas in combination with long-term satellite data provided by Vaisala. And the satellite data was adjusted to these ground stations by another consultant, and that's the atlas that is available. So the atlas that's available at the end of the day from CWET combines the ground station information that is controlled by CWET plus the Vaisala satellite data combined together for an adjusted long-term atlas that's available in India. And so, I think the gentleman who asked about the atlas in Rajasthan, I'd probably direct you there to say that that's a good resource for you.
Okay, thanks, Gwen. I've got another question for you, actually. We have a question from Bilal Babar who says, is there a future possibility of including above 60 degrees north areas in the global atlas? And I will point out that there are many different data sets in the global atlas, and I think a lot of them do include that area. But directing this question to you, Gwen, is there any plans to add those high latitude areas to your data?
And unfortunately, probably not for solar. The look angle on the satellites gets pretty extreme up above 60 degrees north, and the imagery becomes untrustworthy. So in terms of creating a satellite-based model that goes up above 60, that's probably not likely in the near term unless a new satellite or something is put up. Potentially there's something that could be done with using numerical weather prediction or reanalysis data that's adjusted in some fashion to try to reduce the error. So maybe there's something that could be done along those lines to get that information. I know kind of historically that hasn't been an area that's seen a lot of solar development. But with new initiatives, perhaps there's enough interest that there is cause for doing some R&D up in that region.
Thanks, Gwen. Next question is from Christian Breyer. Christian says, I am leading a group of energy system modelers. We would need, in hourly resolution for several years, access to the data in high geographical resolution on a global level. Since we model the entire world, we need data for GHI, DNI, wind speed, local roughness, temperature, air density. Without such accessible data sets, we cannot take advantage of the global atlas. So this is a question we get quite frequently, actually. People are looking for high resolution data or hourly type of data that obviously isn't something that we have in the global atlas. And I'd point out that the data that you use when you go through the project development cycle, you can start off with pretty rough data that helps you out in the very beginning, but when you get to specific project sites, obviously you do need this type of data. So the global atlas was never actually intended to provide that type of data, and one reason is because we think that the companies that are involved in the resource assessment space provide a vital role, and we don't want to take their business away from them, essentially. But we have been moving towards providing better and better data for free over the past few years, and we hope to continue to do that, but I'm not sure that we'll ever provide this type of data for free. But you can buy it from companies out there, and Vaisala is one of those. But I would say, the end of the question said, we cannot take advantage of the global atlas without this, and I would say that's not really true, because we like to think of the global atlas as a suite of services. Although the online platform that you saw today is what most people think of when they think of the global atlas, but it's really a team here of experts and an access to a network of experts. So if you need some type of data that you can't find on our online platform, please feel free to contact us, because we may be able to get it for you. If we can't get it for you, we can direct you to those people that can help you get it and give you some advice on where you should go to get it. So I hope that answers your question a bit. All right, we've got a few more questions here. Next question is from Mohammed Abuela. He's asking, are there any historical output or production data of PV systems available online? And I'm not sure who to direct that to. Nicola, do you want to take that one? The top one.
Historical production of PV system, no. But in the tools section of the Atlas, you do have simulators. One of them is PV Watt that was plugged into the Global Atlas by NREL, and PV Watt is providing, you can simulate PV system with PV Watt on several countries. What you could do as well is, for example, to connect to the HelioClim tool and then pull the data, and then be able to use this data in order to analyze it. This is also a possibility. And then finally, there is another tool that is coming from a project that was on the MENA region, that is the Solar Mediterranean Atlas project, and they had a simulator as well for PV output and CSP as well. And these tools are available also in the platform. You just need to go to the tools section and then launch these programs that are, in addition to the map, these programs are also connected to sometimes very vast data sets. So in that case, you can probably take advantage of them and hopefully make very good analysis with them.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. The next question is actually directed to you as well, but I think actually Gwen and Lionel might be better people to answer this. The question is, as the Global Atlas shows the solar potential by region, does it take under consideration the albedo effect? So again, this would be different depending on each individual data set. Gwen, do you want to address that for the data sets you're talking about? And then Lionel, you can talk about it for HelioClim.
Sure. So our data set does take into account monthly albedo information, although what I suspect they're asking are, for regions of high albedo, the ground reflectivity, again, ends up looking like clouds, kind of like snow does, and it is making the estimates there look lower than they should be. I will say that for the data set that is available in Irena, we didn't do anything special to reduce that low estimate effect for the global data set. Because again, we wanted to have it be consistently processed and not have any areas that were adjusted in terms of the modeling in any particular way. We typically deal with those areas on a consulting basis by taking on-site measurements from clients and using that to bias correct the modeling on a site-by-site basis. I think that there are some ways to potentially deal with the albedo effect on a global modeling scale if you were incorporating like the infrared band, for example, on the satellites. But I would say for the data set that Vaisala has contributed to the Atlas, areas that are, if you know your area has a high albedo effect on the ground, I would assume that the data is probably underestimating on an annual basis what the potential is there.
Thanks, Gwen. Lionel, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just to mention that, yeah, the set2, which method is based on cloud index that take into account this albedo as an index-based approach for the HelioClim 1 and HelioClim 3, and it's not the case for the HelioClim 4, which takes some cloud property-based approach that take into account the atmospheric parameters, so different kind of way to assess this SSI.
If I can make a comment here, Kristen, there's also an albedo effect where the ground reflection can influence the performance of a panel that's not completely horizontal to the ground, that is tilted according to latitude or some other tilt angle. And I don't know if the questioner might have been referring to that effect, but that effect would be important if you are running subroutine in the satellite models, which I believe both Vaisala as well as the HelioClim model does, where you can calculate the effect of the solar resource on a tilted surface, part of that resource being influenced by ground reflection. Is it possible that that might be what the reference to the albedo is in this particular case?
Okay, thanks, Dave. The next question is similar, I think. Yogesh Kumar Singh is asking, for measuring the clearness index, is there some special instrument, or is this done just from a formula basis? I'm not sure who the best answer is for that. Does anyone want to jump in?
I can say from Vaisala. So for measuring, kind of the clear sky, it is essentially kind of using an observation from the satellite. So the satellite is taking an image of the ground, and if it's dark, the assumption is that that's a clear sky image for that region. And so you kind of collect those observations and use those in an algorithm to calculate what the clear sky index would be.
Okay, thanks, Gwen. Anybody else want to jump in? Dave or Leonel? No? Okay. All right, next question comes from Hassan Zuha. He's asking, there is a solar monitoring program in Saudi Arabia installing tens of ground sensors countrywide. Do Vaisala have this data included in their model to increase the accuracy of the outcomes? Gwen, do you want to take that?
Sure. We don't allow the ground station information that we collect to influence the modeling. So we would validate the accuracy of our data set against those stations, but we would not incorporate that information on a global modeling basis to make adjustments to the data set. On a site basis for a particular project, we're happy to use that information to make adjustments to the bias in the model. But again, we won't use that globally to make adjustments because then you lose the consistency of the global model.
Okay, thanks. And Nicola, you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, thank you, Christine. Actually, talking about the Saudi program, so KCare is the organization running the program in Saudi, and we had discussions with them some time ago, and you can find the location of the wind and solar station in the global atlas. We are connected to their geo server, and we can show some of the data that they have. So if you look for Saudi or if you look for KCare, you will find a map, and in this map you will have the location of the stations. Now, from this map, you are not able to download the measurement data, but you can see where the station is, and you get the contact information to contact the person in KCare that could potentially give you access to the data.
All right, thanks, Nicola. The next one is coming your way as well. This is from Rocco Cifarelli. He says, for photovoltaic energy storage and standalone PV systems, it is important to know the maximum days in a row with low solar irradiation in order to correctly size the needed energy storage. Can these historical data per location, say for the last 15 years, be found on the Global Atlas?
If you have to do that with the Global Atlas only, then I would encourage you to use the HelioClim tool, because what it will give you is that for the last 30 years you will have 15 minutes observation, and then you are able to, for a single location, to see the variability. And I found this tool very interesting to see what is happening from of course, from season to season, obviously, but also from year to year. And the time series is the longest we have in the system right now. So it's probably valuable for what you are looking for, if you are looking for a sort of index. Then if you are looking for commercial grade data, then you can turn to the data providers themselves, because that's also a service that these companies would sell in that case.
Okay, thanks. All right, everyone, we have one question left, which I'll read in a second, but we still have a few minutes left. So if you have any questions that you're thinking about asking, please send them to us now. Otherwise, you can always email them to us after the webinar. Okay, Professor R.C. Chips is saying, we have solar data collection established by the government of India, CWET, and we can use this equipment free of charge. What parameters are needed for the Solar Atlas of Jaipur? Nicola, address that? No? I guess he's wanting to provide the data.
So for the time being, the closest we got from to display time series in the global atlas is twofold. Let's say the main one is the initiative that Lionel has been showing, where they are creating a tool that is enabling to access in real time even measurement data from stations, and they are using very similar type of standard we are using the Atlas, and we made some tests with Paritech to be able to host and also to stream this data. And to do that, we have used the data from some of the data from the SMAP project, from the World Bank project SMAP, and they have this global project where they are instrumenting 12 countries, and they are collecting measurement data there, and it's also data that they make available on the SMAP website at the World Bank. Then inside the Atlas, that's not yet something we do on a systematic basis, for example. We don't have yet the capability to absorb vast amount of time series and then make them available for the infrastructure. However, as Paritech is demonstrating, it's totally feasible to do it. So I believe that in a near term, this is in a direction where that would be more and more common to just stream directly your data with some sort of quality assessment process in the middle directly to your users.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. We had another question come in from Usman Rauf, and he's asking, what is the level of accuracy for the data on Pakistan? Well, it depends what type of data you're looking for. I assume you're looking for solar, since this is our solar webinar. But we have data for several different technologies in the Global Atlas. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I know that we have several different maps for Pakistan. I know we have one from the World Bank SMAP program, excuse me, that Nicola just mentioned. Do you know the resolution on that?
It would be 3.
3, okay. So 3 kilometers would be that. But also I'd remind everybody that when you go into the Global Atlas, and if you're searching for data on a specific country, we have maps that are specific to countries for some countries, for many countries. Some countries we don't have any specific maps, but what we do have are a lot of global data sets, including the 2 that were discussed today are global. So even if you don't see a map that's specific to your country, it's not the case that we don't have data for you. We have data for pretty much every country on the globe. So if you don't find something that specifically says a map of Pakistan, which we do actually have a map of Pakistan, but don't forget to take a look at the global data sets as well. Okay, that seems to be our last question. So I would ask if any of the panelists want to have any last comments. Please speak up. No? Okay.
Well, I just want to thank you all the panelists, for the very interesting discussions and presentations, and encourage people in the audience to submit questions that we could forward on to you even after the webinar is completed. But thank you all for your contributions. This has been very interesting.
Thanks, Dave, and I would echo that. Thank you so much to everyone for participating. And from Irena, thank you to ISIS for hosting this webinar. We really appreciate the support from you. And of course, thanks to Gwen and Lionel for presenting. So again, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you very much for your participation, and this concludes the webinar.
Thank you very much, Kristen, and thank you to all the panelists and for moderating the webinar, Kristen. It's really been an excellent event, and we've had a record number of registrations. The Q&A session was really interesting and dynamic, and I think it went for over half an hour, so really delighted for the audience participation on that. I'd like to remind everybody online as well that we do have a webinar coming up next month as well. The title of next month's webinar is Global Status of Renewable Energy, and that's taking place in cooperation with REN21 on the 19th of July. So I'll be sure to send you an email with the registration link to that webinar. Okay, well then that's all from me. Finally, thank you all again, and hopefully I will see you in the next webinar. And remember to check for updates on the ISES website, www.ises.org, or if you're interested in becoming a member and seeing our membership services and benefits, please visit our membership page, join.ises.org. For any feedback or comments, please email public.relations@ises.org or connect with us on our social media channels. Thank you very much. Wishing you a very nice day, evening, morning, whatever time it is in your part of the world. And I'm going to end the webinar now. Bye-bye.